Part of it was due to Merrick Garland and that Justice Department. They deliberately tried to show people that if you protest an abortion clinic peacefully, or if you go to a school board meeting to express your distrust or disbelief about transgender men in women's sports, the FBI would go after you, or they would have a performance art SWAT raid at your home. We've never seen anything like this. The price of the Tesla stock has been cut in half. It's a multi-billion-dollar loss. But the point is that we're watching with these judicial decisions and the Tesla a full-fledged revolutionary effort to emasculate an elected government that has only been in power for 2 months. And I'm speaking on March 21st, so it's only been January 20th to February 20th to March 20th, 60 days or so. And they feel that they lost at the polls, they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the presidency, they don't control the Supreme Court, they lost the swing states, they lost the electoral college vote, they lost the popular vote. And so rather than defer and allow people to govern in the way that Biden did during his 4 years, they have tried to obstruct, and that obstruction manifests itself in two ways. One, they're using regional federal judges, and the weird thing about it is Judge Chuck Schumer, who is under assault because he voted not to shut down the government. It was an irrelevant vote. They didn't have the votes to filibuster anyway, but the left went after him, that he now is almost pleading with the left to listen to what he's been doing. And he said that we are sending Democratic activists into Republican areas and town halls, for example, to shout and scream and yell. But he also said that we have appointed, under my leadership, I don't know what he said, 49 new federal judges, and these are the core of a judicial resistance movement. And what he means is that on matters of trimming the federal workforce, or cutting out U.S. aid, or or deporting gang members, or deporting Hamas terrorist supporters, that they will always find a judge, cherry pick a judge at a lower court to issue an injunction. And that will shut down the entire federal government on behalf of an unelected agency. So what they're basically saying is agencies have an organic life of their own, and they're sacrosanct. So your elected government, the Trump administration that was elected, has no right in the executive branch to determine how federal agencies function, and we're going to stop it. And they do so with a certainty, or the resignation, that it's going to be overturned either at the appellate court or at the Supreme Court. But they have here the idea that will take weeks, if not months. And they're going to file so many George Soros funded and Mark Elias's directed efforts, and these PACs and political committees and commissions and funds, think tanks, etc., that they can slow down the Trump administration, or they can get an appellate court, which I doubt they can, to sustain it. But when they get to the Supreme Court, even there, they believe that through this public pressure of constantly demonizing Trump and saying this is a constitutional crisis and he's acting illegally, that particular justices, such as Chief Justice Roberts or Comey Barrett, will join the 3 liberal justices to give a 5-4 ruling. In any case, it's an effort to stop an elected government. On the other hand, there is a grassroots, I don't say grassroots in the sense that it represents very many people, but it is an effort to appear like a grassroots in which left-wing money is directed at various nonprofits, and they are organizing online protest at dealerships. But more importantly, there are spin-off efforts, and these efforts are known to Democratic operatives and mainstream politicians, who now go on and encourage people to oppose Tesla, and then they now put a little caveat, but we don't approve violence, meaning they have egged on violence. How does that egg on violence work? It can work like Jimmy Kimmel, who's a late night comedian, and he can say something with to fall in with a pregnant pause. So he says, "Hey everybody, don't use violence to stop Tesla." And then everybody claps and applauds. And that is a signal to go use violence. Or you can have herky-jerky Tim Walz, who's really lost his mind lately. He's been calling Trump a fascist, a Nazi. And now, I think yesterday he said that he wanted to fight. He was fighting. I had a Zoom interview with Gavin Newsom, who's in the middle of a pseudo-transformation to the center. But Walt said that he wanted to kick the ASSESs of MAGA people. He doesn't look like a very formidable character. So I don't know what he meant by that. And he said, I don't necessarily mean a world wrestling type of deal, but he's very buffoonish. But then he got on stage and he got an app and he said, I got this app and I just love it because I can see how much Tesla has dropped. And he goes like this, 200 million. And I'm thinking, you have I think he's got well over $1 billion in Tesla stock invested in the Minnesota state portfolio. So what this buffoon is doing is telling the taxpayers of Minnesota, I am so happy that one of our investments lost its value. And that will mean we'll have to make up the revenue through greater general fund expenses. So he hates Musk so much that he's willing to damage his own stock portfolio. Doesn't make any sense. And then he said, of course, that Musk was a South African, and we've heard that before, that he's disloyal, because suddenly the left believes if you're not born in the United States that you're disloyal, after telling us that anybody who is naturalized is exactly the same, or I shouldn't say naturalized, anybody who resides in the United States, whether they're legal or illegal, have the same status. I notice they're not saying that about Mr. Khalil. He's not even, he was born in the Middle East. He's not even a citizen. And yet you accord him more rights than you do Elon Musk. So, and they call him a Nepo baby, nepotism baby. He didn't inherit that money. He created SpaceX. He bought and rebooted X, Twitter. He created Starlink. He created Neuralink. He created Tesla from nothing. He's the greatest inventor and entrepreneur that we've seen in 100 years. And yet they keep trying to demonize him to such a degree now that you go on the internet and you just say Tesla attack, and you will see hundreds of videos of people driving down the freeway and somebody stops their car and gets out and then starts to harass the Tesla driver. Or even Tim Walz, can you believe this? A former candidate for the vice presidency says to the public, just take some dental floss and rub it on that Tesla and break off that emblem. In other words, deface your car or somebody else's car. That's the former vice presidential candidate of the United States. And the whole point is that all of us that own Teslas are supposed not to want to drive them or want to sell them and destroy the resale value of them or destroy new sales. I'm going to give my Tesla to my son, and I'm going to go out and buy a new one just to prove what they're doing is insane. But they're trying to destroy a company. And this is all happening contemporaneously with, of course, the failure of Boeing, the failure of NASA to rescue 2 astronauts. And they're counting entirely on this huge SpaceX rocket, the most powerful in history, to take up the Dragon capsule and do what the government and Boeing could not, and bring these people back down safely, which worked like clockwork. And the person who's responsible for that is now demonized as basically an inauthentic citizen. And why is all of this? Because he had the audacity to do 2 things. In 2016, he endorsed Hillary Clinton. He said that he endorsed Joe Biden in 2020, and he was criticized for Trump for saying that. In 2024, he chose the other candidate, number 1. And number 2, he said that he would use his expertise and due to the federal government, what he did to Twitter. In other words, he was able to reduce the workforce and increase productivity and profitability. And what he's doing now in the government is he's saying, I've got to cut $1 trillion. We owe 1.7 trillion we're borrowing. I can't cut 1.7. And I'm trying to do it without cutting Social Security or Medicare, at least not the stuff that's completely and obviously fraudulent. And we know that Barack Obama and Joe Biden themselves, along with Bill Clinton, said there was billions of dollars of fraud in Social Security and Medicare. If this was Bill Clinton right now or Barack Obama and Joe Biden, the left would be cheering it on, that they were fiscally responsible. And remember what he's trying to do. He's trying to help Trump bring in investment. So they've got $2 trillion of promised new investment, which will result in plants, employment, all sorts of new opportunities. So these workers are going to be re-entering an economy in 6 months where the unemployment rate is probably going to be below 3%, and we're short skilled workers. So for all of that, they're trying to destroy his company and trying to injure people. When you see something like, I just went on the internet just a few minutes ago, and here's the stuff you see. A man walking and putting his hand inside his pants to bring fecal material out so he can smear it on a person's Tesla. Another man going around a Tesla woman driving by herself. He knows she's a single woman, slamming on the brakes so that she has to stop in the middle of the road, getting out and berating her. She didn't know what he was going to injure her. Or a third one where a person drives along, rolls down the window, and starts throwing garbage out the window, projectiles that could cause a wreck. That is all coordinated. These people go online and they get this, and we have people like Jimmy Kimmel and John Cusack and Marco, all of these people, Jasmine Crockett, all of them, and they start to Tim Walz damn, and then they say, but we don't approve of violence, and then these people take it into their own hands. You know where this got started, to be very frank? It got started in the May, June, July, August, September, October George Floyd riots. We saw what happened to January 6th. Everybody says you pardoned them. Many of those people were in jail for 4 years. 4 years. What happened to the 14,000 people who were arrested during that riotous period that Antifa and BLM instigated, where 35 billion in damage, arson, 1,500 police officers injured, 35 people murdered or killed, died, police precinct, federal courthouse, Conic Church torched, tried to rush the White House grounds, sent the president and his family into a bunker. Nothing happened. Very few people were ever prosecuted. And that created a culture on the left that you can do, and we've seen it, the same thing at these campuses with the pro-Hamas, pro-terrorist demonstration. There is a sense on the left that we are so morally superior in our causes that we are exempt from any consequence of the violence we commit. And so to restore deterrence, they're going to have to arrest people who use violence. And if they find that they were organized or talking to people on the internet in an organized fashion, they're going to have to apply RICO standards. He doesn't seem to, he's not a Kardashian, and he's not in the social pages, and he has, I think a lot of his time, I think he has 12 or 13 children, so he's got a lot of parental responsibilities. Donald Trump, 3 to 4 hours. I don't know how that's sustainable. I don't get a lot of sleep, but I try to get 6 hours, and sometimes I don't, but I cannot imagine anything less than 6 hours. I know when you get older, you need less, but he's a workaholic. He's under enormous pressure. They're trying to destroy what was the largest automobile manufacturer in the world in terms of its market capitalization value. They've done half their job, and they smell blood, and they're trying to destroy him. And the real danger is that when you keep calling somebody a fascist, as Tim Walz called him, and a Nazi, as Tim Walz called him, and a Nepo baby, and as other members of Congress have called him, un-American, and you depersonalize and delegitimize somebody, and you keep lowering that bar, you're going to see another Crooks-like figure, a young nut, and he's going to conclude that if he were to do something terrible or attempt something terrible, as they did with Trump, then the people who are smearing feces on cars, painting graffiti on them, burning them, sending Molotov cocktails into the showrooms of Tesla dealers, slashing the cords on Tesla charge, that group of people will, I think you're iconic. They'll make you into a mythology. And that's going to be very dangerous, very dangerous. And you know what the worst thing about it is? If they did that, the people on the left would not feel bad about it. We're in a very revolutionary period. I don't think people understand that. It's a Jacobin French revolutionary Robespierre brother, where violence is now being condoned. And you can see it with the language, the coarsening. Astronaut Kelly called Donald Trump, called Musk an ass, H-L-E. We see Waltz calling him these names. We have all of these Congress people senators using the word S-H-I-T. It's getting so that they're trying to come up with ways to do what politically they have no power. They're impotent politically. People did not want their message. They did not want the border. They did not want inflation. They did not want the transgender message. They did not want the overseas policies. They didn't want any of it. So they voted against it, even though they were outspent 3-1 and they had no media in the sense of the mainstream media, and yet they rejected it. And now the people who are rejected are trying to find ways, either quasi or illegal. Yeah, I think the point is people can look crazy all they want, and I don't care. There's a lot of crazy people, even some on the right. But when that craziness is translated into violence or disruption, and that is praised as any means necessary, and we're seeing it on the campus. I saw that the entire year 2023 from October 7th on. When you have people camping out and disrupting traffic at the Stanford campus, and you have a president who knows that's illegal and breaking the rules and lets that go on, or when you have students that go down and tear off posters of Jewish people who are taken hostage by terrorists, or when you have a professor or a lecturer separate students that are Jewish from the rest of the class, or you spray Hamas slogans on these iconic sandstone colonnades, poor maintenance workers have to clean up after you, or you go into the president's office and trash it, and you do that with exemption. We've only now seen some felony charges that are proceeding through the justice system for the people. But that sends a message, and Columbia sends a message, and Cornell sends a message, and Cooper Union sent a message, and all of this Tesla sends a message that if you're on the left, you are going to receive exemption. And part of it was due to Merrick Garland and that Justice Department. They deliberately tried to show people that if you protest an abortion clinic peacefully, or if you go to a school board meeting to express your distrust or disbelief about transgender men in women's sports, the FBI would go after you, or they would have a performance art SWAT raid at your home. And that gave the left this sense of impunity or exemption. And now it's cascading out of control, and we see where it's going to be complete violence. What's going to happen if they continue to do that? If all of these left-wing young people, they seem to be left-wing young people, but I saw some with gray hair, if they go up to Teslas and they start to throw a Molotov cocktail, or they start to just face it, and some person's coming out of a supermarket to his car, or in the case of the woman that was accosted in the middle of the freeway who was on her way to a doctor's appointment, if they do that, someone is going to react violently to that violence, and then we're going to be in big trouble. It's going to be a spiral into civil strife, and they won't stop it. And it's very important when Pam Bondi says that they're going to use the utmost powers of the Department of Justice. What she needs to do, when they find people who have committed violence, and that violence was coordinated, they need to charge them with conspiracy and racketeering across state lines, and they need to prosecute them for felony convictions. We've learned one thing about a lot of these young people from the rare suspensions on campus. They're not the poor. They're not even the lower middle class. They're all the children of the middle class or the children of the upper middle class or the upper middle class themselves. They put a high premium on their name, reputation, status, and salary and title, degrees. And if some of them were convicted of felonies, felony to commit violence, felony of assault, all of that, then it would send a message. But they have to do that, and they can't let them off. And we'll see what happens. But I would predict, unfortunately, we're going to see a lot more until that happens. We're going to see a lot more violence. They love the idea that, 19,000 people were executed in various fashions, including the guillotine. 6,000 people of the clergy were murdered. And it was a year zero movement. They renamed the days of the week, the days of the month. I think they made the week from 7 to 10 days. They worshiped the superior being, radio, and the secular. They destroyed everything they could in a culture. And this is very similar. It's a cultural revolution. We're changing the number of genders. We're changing our foundational date to 1619. We're doing things that no one ever thought. We're paying reparations after 8 generations to people who were never slaves, from people who never held slaves, in states that were never anything but abolitionists. It's a very radical, fluid period. It really is, and I hope we can get through it. But they covered up Joe Biden. They didn't just cover up his enfeebleness and his dementia. They castigated and demonized anybody who told the truth. And then we were supposed to think that after it was all over, the New York Times and all of these venues were going to be applauded because they said, oh yeah, we made fun of you. We said that you were ageist, that you were crazy. You were right the whole time. We were covering up. We're sorry. They didn't even say we're sorry. And then the second one was, of course, was the Wuhan lab they lied about and protected the Chinese Communist government and Anthony Fauci and Francis Collins that had subsidized that research. It always was known from day one that the virus that killed 1 million Americans and sickened with long COVID 7 million, 8 million people still suffering from it, that originated in that virology lab controlled by the People's Liberation Army. The third thing was they knew that Christopher Steele was a complete fraud, that he invented that whole dossier, and that James Comey, who hired him as an informant, and Hillary Clinton, who hid her payments to them, did their best to disseminate that thing and lie and destroy the Trump campaign. Fourth lie is we know that 51 intelligence authorities knew the FBI had that Hunter laptop Biden in their possession. They knew it was authentic, and then the likes of Leon Panetta, James Clapper, John Brennan, Michael Hayden, Anthony Blinken, Mike Morrell, and others promulgated and organized and cooked up that lie right before the October 23rd debate, which allowed Joe Biden to lie through his teeth that the laptop was a product of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. It wasn't just a lie that it wasn't Hunter's. It was a lie also that Trump had created it with the Russians. That was the inference. And then the fifth and worst lie was Alejandro Mayorkas. It would be like me saying, I'm not in a hotel room right now. I'm home. Oh, no. Something's wrong with you. I'm in Selma, California. I'm not in Palm Beach, sitting in a hotel room trying to get over the flu. I feel I'm at home. That's what he did. He said, the border, it's secure. It's rock solid. It's secure. Oh, those people? That was because we didn't have comprehensive immigration reform. And you're thinking, you're such a liar. You let in 12 million people. And what was the subtext of that lie? I'm lying through my teeth. But you know what? When I'm done and you impeach me and you come in and with a click of your fingers, you shut the border down and make people enforce the law without comprehensive immigration reform, we won. We won. You lost. Did you ever see that weird movie Shooter with Mark Wahlberg? He was an assassin who was framed.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite. Yeah.
And what's his name was the actor. He's a really good black actor, and he was a partner of Mel Gibson.
Oh,
he was in it.
Gosh,
Anyway,
anyway.
anyway, he plays a crooked officer.
Yeah.
And when he's all caught and exposed, he goes over to Mark. He says, "And what are you going to do about it? We win, you lose again." We win, and ultimately in the movie that he doesn't. But the point is, that's the Mayorkas attitude. I'm out of office. You impeach me. Joe Biden's not there. But guess what, you guys? 12 million illegal aliens, 500,000 felons. You go find them. And you know what? Every time you think it's going to be easy, you can even get a Trent gang member, one of the worst people on the planet, and you can try to deport him, and our judges are going to stop you in mid-flight. So you can make fun of me and say I was lying, and we win, you lose again. And that's what their attitude is. That was the biggest lie of all time, that the border was secure. They didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah. Before we go to a break, Victor, since we're on the subject of the Democrats, just one last question about that party. Has Chuck Schumer had it? He doesn't seem like he's going to return to any prominence.
He's 74, and I'm 71. I don't know. I'm pretty busy, but I'd like to. I don't know how these people do it. You saw what Mitch McConnell looks like now, 82, and we saw Nancy Pelosi. I really think that when you get in your 70s, it's time to retire and I'm not an ageist, but somebody who's 71, I feel I couldn't. That's one thing. I think Donald Trump is feeling at 78, Joe Biden 82. Donald Trump's separate. He's a force of nature. Nobody's ever had a constitution like he is. That guy can go out, he can fly all over the country, he can shake 1,000 hands, and everybody around him's got the flu, cold, COVID. He's indestructible. Just amazing. So he's a separate category. But Chuck Schumer represents, there's a play by Euripides where Cadmus and Tiresias are these old traditional Greek figures, and the whole new cult, it's kind of like the Democratic Party, are the Bacchians. Everybody's dressing up as their Bacchians, and they're going up in the mountains, and they're drinking mead and alcohol supposedly, and they have fiercest little pieces of a little wand made out of a pine tree, and they're going in these ecstatic rites. The charge against them is they're engaging in sex and alcohol. We don't know, but it's honoring the god Dionysus and liberation.
Weren't they supposed to all be women that were doing this? Like it was an all-woman?
Supposedly, but that was the idea on Mount Kithaeron, but there were men involved too. So Euripides, who was one of the, I don't know if he's got the mastery of detail, plot, characterization, and drama like Sophocles, but man, he has the best insight into human nature. If you look at Medea or Cestus or any of the other great plays, Hippolytus. But when he has these two guys come on stage and they're like these old fuddy-duddies and they're trying to be hip, and I'm a Bacchant. Oh, look, your little costume needs adjustment. And they're just supposed to be pathetic. And the point I'm making is Chuck Schumer does not know what to do with AOC and Jasmine Crockett. So he thinks he's going to, I got these federal judges through, and now they're just taking the law in their own hands and they're stopping. Don't I get credit for that? And we got guys in red states that are going to these meetings and shouting and screaming. Don't I get credit? So he starts confessing to all of these unethical things he's doing as if he's trying to be a Bacchian or something. And he's pathetic. And he has a very bad record of despicable hate behavior. And I always go back to that 2020 iconic moment when he assembled an anti-abortion, a pro-abortion throng outside the gates of the Supreme Court, why they were in session. And he said, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, you sowed the wind, gonna rip the whirlwind. You don't know what's gonna hit you. And then a few months later, these people turn up at the justices' homes. Merrick Garland doesn't do anything, and we get an assassin who calls his sister up and says, I want to shoot Gorsuch. I don't know what to do. She says, please don't. That's what he had helped engender. And he was the one, along with Barack Obama, remember, who kept telling us that the filibuster, I'm quoting directly, was a racist relic. Obama said that at a funeral of an iconic civil rights leader, but when he was in the Senate, of course, when he was in the majority, he said that the filibuster was a racist relic, and then he himself filibustered Judge Alito and tried to stop him, and then it wasn't so racist. But Schumer is all back, he's always, it's racist, when we're in the majority, and obstructionist when we're in the minority, it's essential, like he is now.